Welcome to tonight's Tanya class. We are in the second section of Tanya, Shar, HaYichud, VaHaemunah. We are holding Perek Tes, chapter 9. So tonight we're going to be talking about, as the title of Shar, HaYichud, VaHaemunah is, Shar means the gate, Yichud of the oneness, and Emunah and faith. So tonight we're going to be talking about both of those concepts. One is Yichud, the way God is truly, truly one, and we'll explain what that means, and also the Emunah and faith, and why faith is important in reference to what? The oneness of God. So, as the title of Tanya, this section is called Shar HaYichud. So what does it mean when we say Yichud, God is one? So, the idea is that, for example, if you have, let's say, one watch, what does that mean? You have one watch. That means there's a second, there's a third, there's maybe 4,000 watches, irrelevant what, but it's one out of many, When we say Yichud, we're not saying Echad, we're saying Yichud. Yichud means it's the only one. It's the true union of one. That means the only one thing that exists in the world or anywhere is what? God. So Yichud not from Echad, but Yichud from oneness. In other words, Hashem, when we say Hashem is one, it's the only one existence. It means God is everything, and everything is God. So whatever you see, or hear, smell, or feel, and you have all these names for it, guess what? It's all God. There you go, you got it. You got it. It's all one. Hashem is truly one. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean practically? I'm going to go into it. That all these levels and depths and everything is irrelevant. If you go behind the scene and behind the mask, what do you have? It's all one. All one. In other words, last week we discussed that when it comes to us humans, the way God concealed himself into humans, because we're really all part of the one of God, right? Right. So there's different gifts that God gave us, namely the Sfirot and the garments. The Sfirot, the highest sphere that we have, hi, welcome. Come have a seat. The highest sphere that we have, the highest power that we have, what's that power? That's the power called Chochma. And that's the biggest gift that we have. To be able to be a human being is what? The gift of Chochma. And when we access our Chochma, and when we make Chochma the first part of our life, that's what we use to engage in the world, that's what we use to engage with people, then our life is, so to speak, on the highest level. The highest level of life is what? When we start with Chochma. We start. There's other parts to us too. But if we start with Chochma, and we make that the beginning and the stronghold, then we're operating on the highest level. What is Chochma? So Chochma comes from two words. Koach, the power, of Ma. Ma means what? When you ask, what is it? What is needed? Right? What will always put you into a deeper perspective of life, and because of that, more meaningful. So if you go through life and you don't have to ask what, guess what? You're spiritually sleeping.
What? No, I'm kidding.
Wake up. You're spiritually right. You're spiritually sleeping. But when you ask what is needed, right? All right, you're awake. What's needed? I'm ready. When you're, for example, learning, studying, whether it's Chumash, Rashi, Mishnah, Talmud, mysticism, and again the list goes on. And when you study, you say, "What is this? What is this saying? What does this mean?" Now you can obviously you said what you said, you read what you read. But when you ask, "What does this mean? What is Rashi trying to say? What is the verse trying to tell me?" Right? You keep on hearing the word "what." What is that? Will take you deeper and deeper and deeper, and that will allow you, so to speak. We call it swimming in the sea of the Talmud and the Mishnah and Chumash, wherever you're studying. So what is, so to speak, your tools of swimming? That's your tools of engagement. And that comes from what? From the highest level that we have, which is Chochma. Once we have a in depth what it is. Now, it doesn't mean because God is infinite, so even though you got it now on the what, could you go deeper and ask the next what? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And it's actually not boring, it's actually exciting. Because what you're really doing is you're peeling away layer after layer and you're going deeper and deeper. So the more you ask what, the more deeper you will go. Now, you want to have a little variety in your life, right? You can't just be heads. Now, there's nothing wrong with studying Torah 24/7. As a matter of fact, the biblical obligation is to study always, unless we have an exemption. But God also gave us emotions. And because He gave us emotions, we're supposed to take that what that we asked, and that information, and that knowledge, and that connection intellectually, and it has to start penetrating what into our heart, into the world of midot. And we get excited about it. Oh my gosh, right? I got to put on tefillin, and it's all exciting. I'm going to connect to God by putting on tefillin or kissing the mezuzah. Wow, I'm one with God. God's going to watch over me, and so on and so forth. It brings the intellectual comprehension of something into a passion. So in other words, if you study academically, and it doesn't break a smile on your face, that means you're studying, which is good. That means, but you haven't penetrated into your heart. God wants us to love Him. Not just know Him, He wants us to love Him. So in other words, when we study, and we should study a lot, and the smile hasn't broken yet, like you reached a whole new plateau, guess what? Don't stop. But you have to go now, not only deeper, but you have to go a little more down into the world of emotions. Are you excited about the fact that, for example, that you're putting on tefillin today? Are you excited that you have a mezuzah and you kiss the mezuzah? Are you excited the fact that you eat kosher and your house is a kosher home? Now, if you're not excited about it, doesn't mean you're not an exciting person. You're an exciting person if you haven't brought down that intellect, that what, that chochma into your emotions. Once you get excited, now you start to develop into like more of a complete human being. From there, as you what, right, chochma, and you get excited, the emotions are going, then where do you go to? You go to thought. What are your thoughts about? What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about the thing you studied? Are you thinking about the passion that you have? Or are you just daydreaming? Guess what? Start thinking back about what you're doing, right? Because your thoughts, the idea is, the reason why we study Torah, and the reason we're excited about Judaism, and the Torah and the mitzvot and prayer, is so that our thoughts can be busy 24/7 with what? With holy, godly things. Now, so we're bringing some life, some blood into our thought. Then what happens is, when you studied something and you're excited about it and you think about it, then you know what happens when you meet your friend? I got to tell you something I just learned. Oh my gosh, right? What is now being activated? Your speech. So your speech is when you're, not only are you excited about it, but now you want to share it. Speech, by the way, the idea of speech is physical speech, and then the concept of speech. But the idea of speech is that, hey, I'm going to share it with you. Oh my gosh, I read this thing, it's phenomenal, right? So in order for you to speak it, you have to have thought about it, and be excited, and have studied it. But as you, again, it goes back down the ladder, starts from intellect, emotions, thought, and then you actually talk about it. And then you say, hey, let's go do the mitzvah, right? Let's do the action. Now, if you go through all the steps properly, when you do that action of that mitzvah, and it's really done in the complete package, whoa, that action is a whole different action. It's not a dull action. It's not a action you do by rote, but it's something which is filled with passion and excitement in life. Now, the reality is, when you do that mitzvah, when you do the action of Chesed or whatever it may be, you are now 5 steps away from the initial thing you studied. Right? Because you went from intellect to emotions, to thought, to speech, to action. 5 steps. Each step compared to the other one is worlds apart. In other words, action and compared to speech, in other words, where's there more energy? The greatest energy is in the intellect. In the emotions, there's less energy than in the intellect. It's an outward type of energy. But you can't compare the energy in the intellect. The intellect is powerful, it's real, that's when you want to comprehend it. When you go into the emotions, that it looks like it's more energy, but actually it's less. And then when it comes to thought, it's even less, because now you're 2 steps away. And when it comes to speech, you're 4 steps away. And when it comes to action, it's an action. It's an activity. You're fusing it with all the energy. But the greatest energy is in Chochma, and the least of energy is where? In the world of action. Now, So in us humans, there's different levels, right? Oh my gosh, wow, I got it, right? Or I'm just doing this action. And hopefully the goal is to have some kind of healthy balance. That's what we discussed last week at great length. That's all in reference to humans, the way we operate. And there's different levels. But God is what is infinite. Now, since God is infinite, let's look at the highest level that we have, because again, we can only use tools that we can relate to. To God, what is the value of Chochma? Nothing. God's infinite. Again, the problem here is now, and we have to try to grasp it, we are using the highest tool we have, Chochma, to comprehend, which is finite, to comprehend what? The infinite God. Not an easy task. So we're like jumping out of our limited intellect mind to try to comprehend something which is infinite, but even though we can never really comprehend it, because again, if we could, then we would be. Right? But we do comprehend that there's a concept which is infinite, and in the world of infinite, what's Chochma?
Nothing.
Nothing. Not only that, the author explains that Chochma and Asiya is technically the same thing. Think about it. If your goal was, let's say, to get to 100, and you have 1, so how far are you away from your goal? 99. If you have 10, you're still 90 away from your goal, but you're closer. If you have 50, now you're 50 at the mark. Now, what happens if your goal is to get to the infinite, and you have 1, and then you have 10, and then you have 50? Are you any closer with 10 or 50?
No.
No, no, because infinite is infinite.
Yeah.
You can have a million and 100 million. No.
Can we ever know?
No, we can never know, exactly.
Not
Even
without
as a soul.
Because we are finite.
That's why.
So whatever level of finite achievement you have, but whatever level of finite achievement you have, you are still finite, and you're not any closer to the infinite. You're not any, 1 and 10 and a million and 100 billion, trillion, whatever the numbers you want to talk about, even you can pronounce them, half of them, you didn't get any closer to the infinite.
No.
So therefore, this high level of Chochma that we're talking about, to God,
It's irrelevant.
in our terminology, so we can comprehend it, it's just God, Chochma and Asiya is the same thing. And the author quotes actually a verse that says, "Kulam," everything that God created, "Bechachma Asisa." He uses Chochma and Asiya in the same sentence. Why? Because Chochma and Asiya is the same thing.
What's Asiya?
Asiya is the world of action, right? The world of action. Now, so in other words, in reference to God, Asiya and Chochma is the same thing. Action and intellect is all the same thing. Mm-hmm. That means, now let's look at this. We have 5 levels, and they're pretty far one from the other. And oh my gosh, wow, right? To God, the highest level and the lowest level is all the same thing. It's all the same thing. Why? Because God is way, way higher and way much greater. Now, so in other words, let's bring it back so we stay on track. So God is one. Everything is part of God. There is no levels. See, in our world, this is more, this is less. Like this is a 1, this is a 5, this is a 10. Right? Level 1, level 2, right? Different levels. You're getting closer to something. Ooh, I'm the highest level. But to God, it's all one thing. It's all nothing compared to the infinite. It's all now. So the question they ask, hold on a second. If you read in the Torah, the prophets, in the Talmud, God is called Rachum, which means compassion, Chesed, he's kind, right? Chochma, and so on and so forth. They give him these titles. Now what does that mean they give him these titles? We said, compared to God, the infinite God, it's all nothing. So why are they giving him these titles? Then they should say infinite. What does that mean you say, referring to God, he's Rachum, he has compassion, Chanun, he's gracious, and Chesed, kindness, Chochma, hello? I mean, pick one side or the other. So what does the author explain? That the truth is that when we say God is Chacham, Chesed, all these attributes, it doesn't mean that's who God is, because God's infinite. What it means is any existence of Chochma in this world, Chesed in this world, Rachum, any attribute that exists in this world, guess what? It comes from God. It comes from God. But it's not God himself. It all comes from God. That's the source of God's existence. Now, so in other words, like this: God is infinite. Everything that exists is all technically on the same level. Means it's infinite, that's finite. But everything that exists in this world, where does it come from? It has to have a source. Where does it come from? God. So here the Alter Rebbe comes and asks a big question. He says, hold on a second. What are we saying? We're saying it's like this. Everything in this world comes from God. But then you're telling me, in the same sentence, it comes from God, but it's totally like nothing from God? I mean, how do the two go together? If it comes from God, then it's a something. And if it's all Chachma and Asiya, the same thing, so what does it mean it comes from God? So the Alter explains like this.
Limited.
Well, what?
This much.
The Alter says that this idea, it's interesting, he says, is yodua, is known to the משכילים. משכילים means the big philosophers, the big brains, not just geniuses, but geniuses of Kabbalah and Zohar and mysticism. In other words, those that comprehend Kabbalah and mysticism know how it works. Now here in the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe actually takes a footnote and takes you on a journey to help you comprehend this idea, which משכילים know. So we're going to be learning now is something which משכילים know. Right? So you're going to take a journey into the heads and the life of a maskil, someone that really, thought and meditated and comprehended in a real deep way how it works. It comes from God, right? It comes from God, but nevertheless, nevertheless, it's like almost like nothing. So the author explains as follows. He says in his footnote that basically the way it works is that you have to know the way the Tzimzum works. Now, Tzimzum is a Hebrew word, so I'm going to translate. And the way Tzimzum works, the author explains like this. Tzimzum means concealment, contraction. And here the author explains 3 different levels. And again, there's multiple. But in this case, right now, the author introduces 3 levels of Tzimzumim. Deep concept, we'll try to explain it as best as we can. 3 different levels of a Tzimzum. What does that mean practically? It means like this. Let me give you a simple example. Let's say you have a huge tank, let's say 100 gallons, correct, of water. Now, 100 gallons of water is a lot of water. And you have this huge, on and off spigot, right? You open it up, if I can give you a shower and push you out of the way for 2 miles, right? Heavy pressure. Without a motor or anything, just opening up a spigot on the bottom, 100 gallons of pressure coming out, you're standing in the wrong spot, you'll get knocked over. Now you have an 8-ounce cup, and you're thirsty. You're thirsty. So here you are, a simple person, you have an 8-ounce cup, you're thirsty, you have an 8-ounce cup, and you have 100 gallons of water. Now, we got a shidduch here. You know what a shidduch means? We got the water, we got the guy that's thirsty, the girl, we got the person that's thirsty, and we got an 8-ounce cup of water. Now, here's the problem. How do we get from this 100-gallon tank to your 8-ounce cup of water? In other words, if I open that spigot and you hold an 8-ounce cup of water there, chances are overflow, it will obliterate that cup, depending on what material it's made out of. It will either smash the cup if it's glass, or will pierce a hole to it if it's plastic, or if it's something stronger, it will push the cup away together with you standing there and holding it, right? So, but on the other hand, I'm thirsty. You got to come up with a solution. So what we need to do is, we need to do something which is called a Tzimzum. We need to get a 10-gallon jug, right? Big opening, put down the 10-gallon thing, open it up, close it within 30 seconds, boom, the 10 gallons filled up. Okay, woof. Now, we went from 100 gallon down to 10 gallon. Now in the 10 gallon, you also have a spigot. You open up the 10 gallon to go into 8-ounce cup, it's much better than before, but you're not out of the woods yet. So you need to take from the 10 gallon, bring it down to a gallon, and now from there maybe down to a half a liter, and then from there you can get into a cup. right? Simple process of a tzimzum. Now, let's bring it back to our case. Before God created the world, you had something which was called the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light of God. Now, in the infinite light of God, guess what? Could any finite existence exist? No, that would be like taking the 8 ounces and I gave it to you 100 gallons. Can I tell you it's infinite amount of gallons? Right? So God had this infinite amount of light. So the first tzimtzum he had to create was the tzimtzum in the infinite light. And that's called the Tzimzum HaRishon. And that's the Alter mentions three, we're going to talk about 3 tzimtzumim here. 3 levels of contraction of light. So the first tzimtzum is in the infinite light, that God had to create a concealment that the infinite light could be concealed to the point that there's a possibility, not yet a creation yet. There's a possibility for a creation in the world. Because think about it, in the infinite, is there an option to go from infinite to finite? No. So the first tzimtzum was that there should be an option, there should be a possibility to go from the infinite to the finite. Once we have the possibility, it means we have the idea, we have the thought, the concept, etc. Okay, now we're talking. So, and again, obviously they go into, it's not an ear in depth, but the general concept is that the first tzimtzum was that God created a possibility that it should be able to be
a little light.
A little light. What's that actually called? That's actually called, on certain levels, it's called the world of Atzilut. Because what does the world of Atzilut mean? It means it's Eitzel, it's close to the infinite God, but already there's a possibility to have some kind of world. There's no world yet. There's no world yet. Now, so Atzilut comes from the world of Atzilut, which means it's Eitzel, it's close to God. There's a possibility to create a world. No creation yet. What happens after God created the world of Atzilut, which means there's a possibility for a world?
Is the world of Atzilut inhabited?
No, it's absolutely not. It does not have any breakdown of anything other than a possibility that from there we have like a step-down transformer that you can go to possibility of creation.
Next level.
Exactly. So from there, the Alter says, God created a tzimtzum which is called Ak. Now, Ak is actually an abbreviation of Adam, human being, a person, Kadmon, in a previous state. What does that mean? It means like this. Adam, when it refers to Adam, so Adam means human being, right? But when it refers to Kabbalah, Adam, what is it referring to? It's referring to the spiritual makeup of a human being. What's the spiritual makeup of a human being? Very good, excellent, very good. No, the sfirot. Adam is the spiritual makeup of a human, is the sfirot. Think about what's the spiritual makeup of a human being? Chachma bina das, Chesed gvura tiferes, netzach yisod malchut. Right? That's the human being. So Adam Kadmon means, now in the world of Bria means, Adam Kadmon means that the initial level of Adam Kadmon means there's a possibility of having Esesfirot. Not Esesfirot yet. Adam Ak means Adam Kadmon, which means that it's the possibility to having Sfirot. No Sfirot yet. Now, the first tzimtzum means there's a possibility of creating a world, possibility of creating something. The next step down tzimtzum is now there's a possibility to have the Sfirot. Not yet. Adam Kadmon. That means the image of the Sfirot, Kadmon in like an infant, in an early stage where there's a possibility to have the 10 Sfirot. Not the Sfirot yet. Now, because that's why it says in the Torah, it says that it refers to God as a human being. And then there's times it says God, Adam, who is not a human being. What does that mean? So it depends on what level we're talking about. But back to the point. So the second tzimtzum is that what? There's a possibility of a human being. And then the Alter says, after that tzimtzum, there's a possibility of the sfirot. Then you have, which is called soid, the secret of dikna. Dikna is already what? Where you already have dots. Dots is where you actually have the formation of the sfirot. So in other words, what happens here is you created 3 levels of tzimzumim from the infinite light. The first level was the tzimzum in the infinite light. Now we can have something, right? Possible to have a creation. The world of Atzilut, it's still not creation. Bria already you have a creation. What happens? Creation, but not necessarily the breakout. What's the next world after Bria? Yetzirah. Where there's already a formation, you can start seeing Chochma, Bina, right? You can already have it already spelled out into live and real Sfirot. Now from there, once you have these different step downs of energy, what happens now? Now you could have actually vessels that can actually hold Chochma, Bina, Das, and so on and so forth. Now,
That's us.
correct. Now, in other words, once you have the level of with the formation, so in the level of the formation of the Sfirot, what do you have? Now in the first level, there's no Sfirot. It's a possibility for a world. In the second one, there's a possibility for Sfirot. In the third level, right now you have Chochma, Bina, Das, etc. Now, what does that mean practically? That means in the third level step down, what do you have? Chochma, Bina, which means you have the יודע, the mada, the yedua. Intellect starts taking shape. An intellect starts taking form. In other words, ultimately, whose intellect is this? It's all from God. But now it's in a way that it has an identity, but nevertheless, it's coming from where? It's coming from God. So in other words, what the משכילים explain, how is it possible to have, on one hand, it's coming from the infinite God, but on the other hand,
It's finite.
it's really almost like nothing, because the way it comes down through the proper Tzimzumim, so it's nimshach, it's coming down, right? It's coming down, it's God's intellect, everything comes from God, but nevertheless, compared to the infinite God, it's nothing. Now, after the Alter Rebbe explains to us, which is very nice, right? He teaches us, according to Kabbalah, according to the משכילים, how it's possible, but then he turns around and he says, no, that's all great, and it was nice you had a good time, because it's really enjoyable, right, to comprehend the stuff. Tzimzum, the Tzimzum in the infinite light, right? You liked it, and then Tzimzum in the Adam Kadmon, right? There's a potential for the Sirot, and then you have the Adikna, you have the different levels, right? You have the Spirit, and so on and so forth. And he says, now take a deep breath. He says, however, us simple people. Now, if you want to remain, again, present company is always excluded, but us simple people, not this high-level intellectual, Kabbalistic intellects. We're not talking about IQ, we're talking about Kabbalistic intellects. Us simple people have to use, and he uses the word, emunah shlema. No, not only faith, emunah shlema, he uses two words. Complete faith. Complete faith. That what? The Hashem, God, all God's attributes, and he says, he spells it out, emotions, intellect, the will of God is all really what? Is all united what? With the infinite part of God. And as he quotes from the Zohar, that everything is all part of the oneness of God, which is referring to the Sfirot, and it's actually called Raza, the secret, right, of faith, which means, and here he finishes off with a very powerful statement, which that is the faith which is actually higher than intellect. So not only is he telling that we have to have faith, but he's actually saying the faith is actually higher and deeper than intellect. Why? Because intellect is a lower level at the end of the day. You're using, yes, true, the highest level that we have of a sphera, but faith is higher than the sphirot. And ultimately, if we really want to, I don't want to use the word comprehend because we're going back to intellect, but if we want to connect and relate to the oneness of God, the tool to use that is what? Not faith. Intellect.
It's faith.
Exactly. And which is interesting is that, what's the name of this whole section of Tanya? Shar HaYichud, VaHaemunah.
The gate of
the oneness and faith. So in this chapter, chapter 9, the Alter actually brings it all together with telling you it's really all about realizing that what? It's all one. Everything is one. All the different levels, great. Hi, welcome. Perfect timing. All the different levels are great.
It's over.
It's the beginning. All the different levels is all part of the oneness. All the different levels are all part of the oneness. But ultimately, if you want to be able to really connect and appreciate the idea of the oneness of God, you're not going to get it through intellect.
No, it has to be higher.
Yeah, you have to be higher.
And that's
What is higher?
Faith.
Higher is faith, not only faith, emunah shlema. So when a person has emunah shlema, complete faith, that's almost like when you're jumping off the cliff. Who's ready to jump off the cliff? Huh? Without the parachute, absolutely without the parachute, yes. If you're jumping off the cliff with the parachute, you didn't jump off the cliff. You're still on the cliff, a different type of cliff. But the point is, when you are ready to jump off the cliff, and you take that deep breath, that it's either all over or all starts right now, that's when you will really embrace the oneness.
Wake up.
Wake up. So in other words, if you really want to comprehend, again, keep using the word comprehend, it's not comprehend. If you really want to connect and relate to the idea of what real oneness is, don't use intellect. Not going to get you too far, because you're going to get stuck at some point. You're going to be locked, and you're not going to be able to get past what intellect has to offer. Intellect will only take you so far. What's the expression, right? Intellect will take you so far, and that's when faith takes over. So when a person has emunah shlema, complete faith that God is really, really one, then you'll be able to not only relate, but you'll have to feel it, you'll have to see it, and you'll be able to live the true oneness of God, that everything is God. Now what happens when you actually get into that place where you have 100% faith that everything is God? That means everything before you, everything with you, everything after you, time, space, it's all God, it's all oneness. How do you feel?
Wonderful.
You feel really peaceful. You feel joyful. Why? Because everything is God. I mean, everything is God, and God is all good, right?
You're awake.
You're awake.
That's
You actually see. You actually see. So, in other words, this chapter, Perek Test, chapter 9 in Tanya, is an extremely important chapter, because this chapter in Tanya will give you the greatest gift, the gift of being able to experience the oneness of God, and it gives you the tools how to get there, which is basically having faith in the oneness of God, that God is everything, and yes, God is the infinite, God is the finite, but the truth is the infinite and the finite really is all one in the same.
so one collection.